What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we are here on the SEC channel at the Voice of College Football. Our next schedule preview is South Carolina. Before we get into the 2022 schedule, let's look back at 2021. Here was the schedule from 2021. Of course, South Carolina always has a tough schedule when they play Clemson in the non-conference. You look, though, they didn't really schedule anything else that was very tough in the non-conference. They had Eastern Illinois, they had East Carolina, and Troy, so three fairly easy games there in the non-conference to go along with Clemson. And then you look at who they played out of the SEC West. They had to play Texas A&M and Auburn, split those two games. But that was not too tough of a draw either. Didn't play Alabama, didn't play Ole Miss. Those were the two top teams in the West last season. So a pretty good draw for South Carolina last year. Let's look now ahead at 2022. Before we go game by game, let's see who they play outside of the division. Of course, they're going to play every SEC East team. They'll play Georgia State, Charlotte, South Carolina State, and on the road at Clemson in the non-conference. Georgia State, a team that took Auburn down to the wire last year, so maybe that's not a cupcake game, but still a game that South Carolina should win. But having to play Clemson every year is obviously pretty tough. And then you look at who they play out of the West. They'll play on the road at Arkansas. They get Texas A&M at home. Not a terrible draw there. Texas A&M might be the second best team in the West, but Arkansas could be the third best team in that division. Going to be interesting to see how that race shakes out. But they do avoid Alabama, and when you look at the SEC West, you're not really going to have any easy games in the SEC, at least against the West. So not a terrible draw, but not a great draw either with Arkansas and Texas A&M. But the good news for them is, again, they only have the one tough non-conference game. They'll start off with Georgia State. They're on September 3rd. Then they go on the road to face Arkansas on September 10th. They're in week 2. And then it's Georgia on September 17th. So back-to-back really tough SEC games there in week 2 and week 3. That is interesting. That's a pretty early time to have two SEC games, two big SEC games like that. A lot of people talking about that Georgia game as potentially a game where they could pull off a big upset. And they'll have the opportunity there, but it's going to be tough. And again, they have to play Arkansas the week before that. Then it gets a little easier with Charlotte and South Carolina State. So in those first 5 games, yes, they do have their 3 non-conference games, their 3 easy non-conference games, but they have Arkansas and Georgia in back-to-back weeks. So an interesting start to the season for them. You go into the month of October, they'll play Kentucky on the road on October the 8th. Then they'll have Texas A&M at home on October the 22nd. Missouri after that on October 29th. So looking at the month of October, it's not brutal, but it's pretty tough. I mean, Kentucky and Texas A&M in there, also Missouri. So 3 SEC games that they might have a chance in. We'll see. And then you go into the month of November, they'll play Vanderbilt on the road. Then they'll have Florida on the road, Tennessee at home, and close things out with Clemson. So it kind of comes in clusters for them. They have several very tough back-to-back stretches. Arkansas and Georgia, very tough back-to-back. Kentucky and Texas A&M, very tough back-to-back. And then Florida and Tennessee back-to-back. And then you can throw Clemson in there as well and really look at those 3 games in a row to close out the season. So a pretty tough schedule for South Carolina. It could be worse, though. The good news is they don't have any tough non-conference game outside of that Clemson game, and they don't have to play Alabama. So we've seen some brutal schedules for South Carolina in the past. This is a tough schedule, but it's not one of those brutal schedules that we have seen before. So all in all, again, pretty tough schedule for South Carolina in 2022.